Hi guys, welcome back. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to the Value of the Phoenix podcast, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that I feel like is quite a personal one. I personally believe that it's a very common limiting belief, and that is one of the main reasons why I want to discuss it in this episode. So we are going to be talking about abandonment issues. So whether you have experienced these issues or whether you know someone that, is going through these issues, abandonment issues can really deeply affect people's lives, in particular, their personal relationships. So platonic relationships like friendship, but also romantic relationships as well. But the good news is, as with any limiting belief, you can work on these issues. You can become the person that you know that you can be. So let's have a look at how we can recognize abandonment issues, understand it a little bit more, and what we can do to actually get you out of those issues. So what exactly are abandonment issues? Well, I would say at its core, it's to do with feeling abandoned, feeling left, feeling rejected by those that you care about. And as we know with limiting beliefs, they can stem from various experiences in your life, but the main cause that I have found is to do with childhood issues, things that you've been through in your childhood, and also any kind of like major events that you may have been through in your adulthood as well. So as we know, when it comes to limiting beliefs, these beliefs essentially follow us through our adult years and can really affect the friendships, the relationships, just the general relationships that we have in our lives. It can really affect them. And so when you have abandonment issues, it can cause various things to essentially go wrong in those relationships. It can cause you to not trust others. It can cause you to also not trust yourself. It can cause you to have a fear of, being intimate with people. And I don't mean, like physical intimacy. I also mean emotional and mental intimacy as well. It can essentially just cause you to not want to be vulnerable with people and not want to show your true, authentic self, which is also another form of abandonment. That is self-abandonment. So one thing that I always like to advocate for is the fact that your feelings are always valid, but sometimes those feelings can be caused by limiting beliefs, meaning that you would see the world through your own perception, not necessarily by what other people may see it as well. So what you might view as someone abandoning you, another person might not view it in that way. And so I think that is probably the issue when it comes to abandonment issues, is that you are always on the lookout for people to reject you. You're always on the lookout for people to abandon you. Your brain is actively seeking out reasons to say, okay, this person doesn't want to be with me anymore. This person doesn't want to be around me anymore, because your subconscious has been wired through, childhood and adulthood experiences. Your subconscious has been wired for you to believe that you are going to be abandoned, even when that might not necessarily be the case. So I'll give you an example of this. Let's say you're someone that is in a relationship, but you have abandonment issues, and your partner has now said to you, is it okay if, I know we said that we were going to stay in on Saturday, but is it okay if I go out with the boys instead, because they've asked me if I want to go to this football game, for example. And let's say at that time, even though you'd said that you were going to stay in, there wasn't really any plans. It was just that, you live together, you're both not doing anything on that weekend, and therefore you were both just going to be at home. Rather than feeling as though, okay, cool, my partner, they've asked me if it's okay for them to go and spend time with their friends, I don't have an issue with that. You may feel as though, because of abandonment issues, that your partner might be lying to you about, where they're going, or you might feel as though you're being rejected. Oh, so you want to spend time with your friends, but you don't want to spend time with me, even though your partner may have spent the last 3 or 4 weekends with you. Do you see what I mean? So sometimes it can be difficult when you have abandonment issues to to have a healthy relationship, to have a healthy romantic relationship, because your brain is always seeking out information that suggests to you that you are being abandoned. So let's take a look at some of the common signs of abandonment issues. So this could be that you have a fear of being alone. A lot of people that have abandonment issues tend to get into relationships relatively quickly. It might be, one after the other, hardly any breaks in between, because they have this fear of being by themselves. And the reason for that is because you feel the need to constantly be around people. You want people to always be there for you because you are scared that deep down they're going to leave you anyway. So it's almost like you hold on so tightly to people that it can actually cause them to want to break free, want to kind of push away from you, because it can be really overwhelming. You depend on people a lot. And so another sign of abandonment issues is codependency. And I do feel like codependency and the fear of being alone work together, because most of the time, if someone has a fear of being alone, it's because they're codependent. So with codependency, it's that you essentially don't really trust yourself. You want someone else to make all of those decisions for you. And we did mention this in one of our previous episodes, which was all to do with desperate energy. And I feel like this kind of, links to that as well. When you are desperate, when you are codependent, you rely on people heavily. You want that external validation. You want other people to validate you rather than going within and learning to self-validate. Another sign of abandonment issues is that you have difficulty trusting people. And essentially that's just due to the fact that you are scared that they're going to leave you. You're scared that they're going to reject you. And so you have that difficulty in actually believing people when they say or when they show you that they actually do want to stick around. And that leads on to another sign of abandonment issues, which is pushing people away. And I know that that can almost seem a bit like counterintuitive. It can seem as though, why would you be pushing people away if you have abandonment issues? But essentially that is to do with that lack of trust. You don't trust that people are going to stay. So even when people show you or are trying to prove to you that they do want to be around for you, you actually end up pushing them away because you don't believe them. So it's almost like a lose-lose situation, because when you have people in your life that are good to you and want to be there for you, for example, you'll push them away because it almost feels like wrong. Whereas when there's people that are actively abandoning you and rejecting you constantly, you actually feel like that is the norm, and that is why you tend to hold on to those people, a lot more than the people that are actually good to you and try and, be there for you and stick around for you. Abandonment issues is quite an interesting one, because a lot of the time there is this like push-pull going on. It can be highly addictive, and a lot of people, when they are in those kind of push-pull dynamics in relationships, those relationships tend to be extremely toxic, and it can be really difficult for both people to actually let go because of that addiction to that. I love you, but I don't love you. I want to be with you, but then I don't want to be with you. Like, it can feel so addicting. And that is why essentially those toxic relationships are not good for you, because they give you this like rush, but then they also drag you right down as well. So it's almost like this roller coaster of emotions. So if you are someone that has abandonment issues, or you notice that you're in relationships that have that roller coaster dynamic, that is the reason why. You're basically trying to seek that high again. So when things were perfect, that's basically what you are chasing. And so when it goes to the high, you feel relieved, you've got it back, but then it goes back down, but then it comes back up. So that is where the addiction kind of plays its part in those relationships. And lastly, another sign of abandonment issues could be that you over-analyze people's behavior. This is a very, very common one, because you are always on the lookout for signs, clues, hints that someone may be rejecting you, abandoning you. You're always on the lookout for those things. So something that could seem so normal to someone else, you could be over analyzing that situation. Like, oh, that person didn't hug me the way they normally hug me, or that person hasn't been messaging me today the way that they normally message me. And whilst there could be, a simple reason as to why, it may be that they're busy that day, or, work has been overworking them, for example, or stretching them. Rather than viewing it in that way, you will overanalyze the situation and essentially start making up stories in your mind as to what is actually going on, because, as we said, you find it difficult to trust people, and therefore you're always looking out to prove your brain right that this person is abandoning you, even if they're not. So one thing that I just want to point out is, with all of these signs that we've just spoken about, just because you may have one or two, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have abandonment issues. So if you find that this is constantly an issue for you, then that might be a sign that you have abandonment issues. But as I always mention in our videos, a lot of limiting beliefs, they all tend to stem back to this fear of not being good enough. And so this is why sometimes you can cross over in many different limiting beliefs. So just bear that in mind. Essentially, all limiting beliefs boil down to not feeling like you are good enough. Okay, so where do abandonment issues actually come from? I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about abandonment issues, they just talk about it in the sense that, when you were a child, either your parents got divorced, or one parent left, whatever it could be. There's actually other things that can cause abandonment issues, and these can be loss. So if you lost a close family member, it doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, but it could be someone that you are close to, or someone just in your immediate family when you were young. So a sibling, an auntie, a cousin, a grandparent, for example. It doesn't have to just always be a parent. It could also be to do with neglect as well. And I feel like this is one that's not necessarily spoken about enough. But if you were neglected by your parents, let's say you had a parent that worked a lot, or you had a parent that had substance abuse issues or was an alcoholic, for example, that can also cause abandonment issues, because in your mind, you feel as though that thing is causing that parent, person, whoever it is in your life, to abandon you. So it's not just about, people leaving your life. It could also be people are actually in your life, but they're actually abandoning you for other things in their lives that they want to focus on, i.e. work, substance abuse, alcoholism, whatever it could be. So in your adult years, you can also, go through things that cause you to have abandonment issues. And that could be any kind of major event that has happened in your adulthood. So that could be the betrayal of, someone close to you. So that could be a friend, for example, or it could be a partner in a relationship. Let's say you get cheated on, that can cause abandonment issues. A divorce can also cause abandonment issues as well. These issues can cause us to not trust people, which again is a sign of abandonment issues. And it can just cause you to have negative thinking, in the sense that people always leave, I'm not worthy of love. And whilst you may not necessarily be saying these things out loud, these negative thinking patterns can be forming in your subconscious mind. You might not even realize that they are forming there. And so that can then lead you to have these limiting beliefs. But as we know, with time, effort, and doing the work on yourself, you can get rid of these limiting beliefs. So I like to mention this because I do feel like it's important, because a lot of people don't know where to start with their limiting beliefs. But we have an ebook dedicated to helping you identify and challenge your limiting beliefs. So make sure that you check out our website, thevalueofthephoenix.com, where you can purchase this along with some of the other digital products that we also make. So when it comes to abandonment issues, it can really cause you to have like anxious thoughts and feelings about, let's say, a relationship, for example, or a friendship that you're in. It can cause you to have anxiety because you will always just feel as though these people are going to abandon you. You know, you could find yourself wanting to look through people's phones. You can find yourself spiraling, constantly overthinking, why hasn't this person texted me back yet? Why haven't I heard from them? Why aren't they here yet? Why haven't they done this? Why haven't they done that? It can literally drive you crazy because your brain is going to be on overtime with that negative thinking. And another thing is, you might end up self-sabotaging those relationships because essentially it's almost like you would rather do hurt now than for you to get hurt later. And self-sabotage is something that I am going to talk about in one of our future videos, because I feel like that definitely needs a video of its own. But yes, it can cause you to actually sabotage relationships that you have. And it's quite sad because I have personally found that a lot of the relationships that do end up being self-sabotaged are the ones with people that actually do care about you and have your best interests at heart. Abandonment issues can also cause a lot of distance and a lot of fragility in relationships, making them really difficult for you to have for an extended period of time. So you may find that whether it's you or whether it's someone that you know, their relationships do not tend to go as far as maybe they would wish for them to go, because they are just so fragile that any little thing can break that relationship. Or it's the complete opposite, where it's essentially a relationship that is just push-pull for so long until eventually one person in the relationship just decides, finally, I can't do this anymore. I have found that it's either quick relationships, in and out, or really long relationships that to other people it may look as though, oh my gosh, it's standing the test of time, but really there's that almost like a trauma bond there, and so it can make it difficult for people to actually want to leave those relationships out of fear of being alone. Okay, so we've spoken about all of the negative things that can come from having abandonment issues, but now it's time to look at what we can actually do to help ourselves get over these issues, to help ourselves work on this particular limiting belief. And the first thing that I would always say to anyone is to acknowledge what it is. If you don't acknowledge what it is, if you don't acknowledge that you actually have an issue, it is going to be very difficult for you to work on it, because how are you going to work on something that you don't know that you have, or that you're denying that you have? You have to acknowledge where you are. You have to acknowledge, okay, cool, I have this issue. However, I am now ready to work on this issue. One of the great ways that you can do this, and I always say this, is to write a letter to yourself. Write a letter to yourself about this issue, why you think you have it, how it's actually affecting your life. Because a lot of the time, when it comes to limiting beliefs, we don't actually realize how those limiting beliefs are affecting our lives. We're kind of just so used to them because it just becomes the norm for us. It just becomes everyday life that we don't actually realize, oh my gosh, my abandonment issues have actually caused me to not trust people. Therefore, I've lost quite a lot of my friends, or my abandonment issues have caused for my relationships to not flourish, or have caused me to end up breaking up with someone that I actually, looking back on it now, think really cared about me. So sometimes you need to actually write down how these things are affecting you in your life, so that you can really pinpoint, okay, these are the reasons now why I want to change. I don't want to lose any more friends. I want to be able to trust myself. I want to be able to trust others. I want to be able to trust partners. I want to have a healthy relationship. Therefore, this requires me to work on these issues that I have. Another thing that you can do is to start working on your self-worth. So, as I mentioned before, abandonment issues and all limiting beliefs essentially stem from this feeling of not being good enough. And so, if you are willing to work on your self-worth, work on showing yourself that you are worthy, you can overcome these limiting beliefs. So how can you actually work on your self-worth? Well, what you can do is build up your self-esteem outside of those relationships, which can help you when you do get in those relationships to recognize that your worth is not actually defined by that relationship. Working on your self-esteem will really change your life. And so other things that you can do is to start doing things by yourself, start going out and doing things that you actually enjoy. Start being a joy seeker. And it's so interesting because a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the time when it comes to depression, when it comes to, not feeling good within yourself mentally and emotionally, it's because you're probably not doing a lot of things that actually bring you joy. And there's scientific evidence that shows that doing things that you enjoy gives you that self-fulfillment. That is what builds that self-trust. That is what builds that self-worth. So when you are doing things that you enjoy, you're present within the moment and it just makes you feel good. And so by becoming a joy seeker, you are actively doing things that will bring you joy. You are actively seeking out little things in your life that can just make you feel better. And that is one of the first steps in building your self-esteem. Now, another thing that you can do is learn to build healthy boundaries. And sometimes I feel like boundaries get a bad rep, but I think it's because people use boundaries as a way to put other people in their place, but really boundaries are to do with you. Boundaries are there to help you have healthy relationships with those people based on what you feel like makes sense for you, your emotions, and your mental health, your mental needs. It's not about other people. And so by learning to set these healthy boundaries, whether it be in friendships or whether it be in relationships, you will create an environment that you feel safe in. You will create an environment that you feel good in. And I saw a video on TikTok the other day, and the lady was basically saying that rather than looking at people or situations as good and bad, you should look at it as safe and unsafe. And in that way, it will help you to determine people, situations, places that you feel comfortable in and that you don't feel comfortable in. One of the ways that you can really determine whether people are supposed to be in your life or not is to ask yourself, do you feel safe around these people? And I'm not just talking about physical safety, I'm talking about emotional safety, mental safety. Do I feel safe with you? Because if I don't feel safe with you, then that is a sign that maybe, you shouldn't be in my life. Or if I do still want you in my life, I have to just set the tone. I have to have these boundaries that I don't necessarily need to tell you, but I just need to have these boundaries in place to know that, okay, so I can't deal with you in this kind of situation, but I can deal with you in this situation. Therefore, I will just deal with you in this capacity, rather than doing the most and trying to just fit people in every single box that we possibly can. That is not a great way to live. And so by being aware of this safe and unsafe, it just helps you to just establish who you actually want in your life, the people that you don't want in your life, and the people that can be in your life but only under, these certain circumstances. And another thing that you can do is to practice mindfulness. Now, the value of the Phoenix within itself is built on affirmations and, making better decisions for yourself and working on your self-concept. So by practicing mindfulness and doing, making sure that you are saying your affirmations, making sure that you are working on your mental diet, i.e. the thoughts that you are thinking, making sure that you're working on those, because a lot of people find it quite strange and quite difficult to believe that you can control your thoughts. You can decide what you want to think about, and you can decide what you don't want to think about. If you are someone that notices that you're constantly thinking negative things, you can actually tell your brain, I don't want to think about that. Or you can actually say, whatever it is that you're thinking that's negative, you can flip the script. You can come in and say, well, actually, no, this is what I want to think. And that is where mental diet and being aware of your thoughts plays a part. Another thing that you can do, like I said, is listen to affirmations. We on our channel have a whole array of affirmations that you can listen to. We have some shorter ones. We also have the night sleep tapes, which I personally feel really helped me on my self-concept journey, because when you are in that state akin to sleep, as Neville Goddard talks about, that is when your subconscious is more open. So when you are going to sleep, when you are drifting to sleep, and when you are first waking up, those are actually the best times to say your affirmations or to do your visualizations, because your subconscious is open. So that's why I really love sleep tapes to listen to as I'm going to sleep, and also as I'm asleep, it's there in the background. Sleep tapes definitely help me on my self-concept journey. And another thing that you can do is to just get outside. And I know that you're thinking, get outside. But seriously, get outside, start living life, start doing things, start trying new things, set yourself goals, give yourself something to work towards, because you'll feel a sense of fulfillment, you'll feel a sense of empowerment as well, because you are able to do things, you're able to follow through on the promises that you make to yourself. And that is the key if you want to build your self-concept. You have to learn to trust yourself, which will then in turn allow you to start making better decisions about your life. Your life will only change once you start making better decisions. If you keep making the same decisions that you were making before, you're going to see the exact same results. So test yourself. If something comes up in your life that, might be triggering for you, or might be a sign that, the old ways are trying to slip back in, make a better decision this time. Make that better decision. And trust me, you will look back in a few days or in a week's time and be like, oh my gosh, I've changed. Normally I would have done this, but instead I done that. I've changed for the better. That is the key to self-concept. Start making better decisions. Start making better choices about yourself, for your life, and what you want your life to look like. So I keep on seeing on TikTok people saying, when it comes to relationships, when they're dating someone, they'll say, for example, oh, my future husband wouldn't behave like that. My future husband wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. And I want you to use that phrase, but for yourself. Oh, my future self, she wouldn't behave like that. Oh, my future self, she wouldn't make that choice. She would make this choice. That is a really great way for you to become this future self, this new, improved version of you. Ask yourself, would my future self do that? No, she wouldn't. So let me just not. Let me make the better decision, because my future self will appreciate that. That is what I want you to start doing. Start thinking about that new and improved version of you. Okay, so overcoming abandonment issues, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something that's just going to happen overnight. It isn't. As with anything in life, it is not just going to happen like that. But with patience and with persistence and with trusting yourself, you can overcome those abandonment issues. You just have to show yourself, prove to yourself that this is actually what you want to do. Do you want to overcome these abandonment issues? Because it is very easy to talk the talk and not walk the walk. So talk the talk, but also make the decisions that show yourself that you can also walk the walk. Okay, guys, that is the end of this episode. I hope that you enjoyed this. And for any of my girlies out there that do have abandonment issues, I really want to stress to you that this doesn't have to be the end. You can overcome these abandonment issues. You can do this. And you don't need to be looking back on the past and allowing the past to dictate your future. You now have the opportunity to dictate your future by making these changes and by becoming this person that you know that you want to become. So yes, guys, I hope that this was insightful, and I hope that this really does help you along on your self-concept journey. But yes, I will see you in the next one. Bye.